Okay, let's begin. We are on the Gemara, page 13a6. Says the Gemara, Hayave kiritot katani. You said to me, all the people that are obligated that have karet, and they could also get malkut. Hayave mitot bedin lo katani. But when it comes time, or when it comes for cases which are hayav mita bedin, which means not that the punishment is death, but rather the punishment is death as it is administered by a human court. Okay, so not when the punishment is mita b'dei shamayim. Hayave mitot bedin lo katani. You didn't say any of those. Okay, what does that seem to say? It seems that you can't get double jeopardy on that. Matnitan mani, who holds this way? Rabbi Akiva. That's Rabbi Akiva. Why? The Tanya, the Braita says, a person who's hayav karet, or if his obligation or if his crime deserves a mitat bedin, in either case, yeshno bichlal malkut arba'im. He's able to also get a malkut. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael holds you could get double jeopardy, not only on karet, but also on a human punishment, a human death penalty. Rabbi Akiva says, Hayave kiritot yesh malkut arba'im. Hayave kiritot, yes. Why? Shimasu teshuvah. What happens if you do teshuvah? Betin shel ma'ala mochalin lahem. In Shamayim, they give you mechila. Hayave mitot betin, eno bichlal malkut arba'im. Why? So when it comes to karet, why would we give you malkut? Because there is a possibility that you won't get karet. In which case, what will you have received as punishment for your crime? Nothing. So therefore, we give you malkut with karet. But since when it comes to the death penalty of bedin, eno bichlal malkut arba'im. Shimasu teshuvah, because if you do teshuvah, in bedin shel mata mochalin lahem. Bedin down here on earth cannot undo a death penalty because you did teshuvah. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Makes sense. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva would be the one, the author of our Mishnah, which differentiates between karet, which receives malkut, and hayaveh mitot bedin, which does not. Rabbi Yitzhak says, hayaveh kiritot bichlal hayu. Hayaveh kiritot were in the category of malkut, right? Velama yatzat karet ba'achoto. Why do we give an extra line with regards to karet for a person who commits arayot with his sister? Ladunu bekaret velo bemalkut. No, says Rabbi Yitzchak. What do we learn over here? Normally, you have a situation where you would give malkut, but since over here the pasuk expressed, after telling me that all of these people in the following category get karet, but then you have this specific one tells you that you don't get karet. What's that coming to tell you? Tell you that you do get karet. You already told me. When something is in a category, and then the Torah again tells you that it's in the category, there must be a reason why it's doing it. So the line that we learn from that is, and this is a fascinating line in the language of the Rabbi Yishmael. Anything that was bichlal was in the category, v'yatsa min haklal, and it left the category to teach on itself. Lo lelamed al atzmo yatsa. It did not come to teach about itself. Ela lelamed al kol hakelal kulo yatsa. It came to teach you on the whole category. Okay, so since that's the case, says Rabbi Yitzchak, therefore, once I told you about karet for achoto, for the sister, not only does it teach me that I only get karet and not karet and malkut, I learned from that every time there's karet, also you only get karet and you don't get malkut. So you see what we got over here? We have one opinion that says karet is the only one that gets malkut. Another opinion that says karet gets malkut and hayaveh mitot bedin gets malkut. Now we have a third opinion of Rabbi Yitzhak. That Rabbi Yitzhak says even karet doesn't get malkut. Okay? Now we don't know. Maybe Rabbi Yitzhak holds that hayave mitot bedin, right, does get karet.
Does get karet or malkut?
Does get karet. Does get malkut, mehila. Right?
To get karet after being killed.
After being killed, exactly. Kill him again! Right? But in truth,
But isn't there a general rule that you can have two punishments for the same crime?
we're going to get into that.
Okay.
We're going to get into that. Okay? Fine. So, that's Rabbi Yitzchak. Now the Gemara says, my Tamad Rabbi Ishmael. Let's analyze each one of these shitot. My Tamad Rabbi Ishmael. Why does Rabbi Ishmael hold that only for that you get malkut for this? Like we started the Braita that you only get Tatanya Echad Chayave Kiritot and Chayave Mitot. You get for both of them. You get malkut. What's the reason for him? Because it says in Lo Tishmor Lasot Kol Dvrei Torah Azot. The Torah gives us a general rule. If you're not careful to not do any of these, negative commandments, you get malkut. Vichtiv, and it says, Vifla Hashem et machotecha, and Hashem will make wondrous. The word pele, nifla, is like wondrous or extraordinary or over and above. Vifla Hashem et machotecha. So, since the expression when we're talking about this punishment, we use the word hifla. Hafla zo eni yodea mahi. I don't know what you mean when you say vihifla. Hashem will give you extraordinary or wondrous blows. What are these blows that Hashem is going to give you? What does the pasuk say? Kishu omer, when the Torah tells us that the punishment for a lo ta'aseh is vihipilo hashofet v'yikau lefanecha, the shofet, the judge, will cast the defendant down and they'll give him Makkot, okay? V'hikau lefanav, and they'll hit him in his presence. Havi omer, now I know, right? Hafla'a zu malkut. Now I know that this language of hafla'a is malkut. Now, this is very interesting, by the way. Why?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Kishehu omer v'hefilu hashofet v'yikau lefanav. Is that when he's rendering the decision for the court imposed death sentence?
No, that's when he's rendering decision for the court imposed malkut decision.
Oh, okay.
Now, what's wild over here is that the Torah, that the opinion of Yitzhak is conflating these two words.
Is this a Rabbi Ishmael?
Yeah, Rabbi Ishmael, because the word, right, the word that we're using in the first instance is v'hifla.
The appeal.
Hifla is lashon pele, pei lamed aleph, right? Pelephone, wonder phone, right? It's wondrous. That's really why they called it that, right? In the beginning, when cell phones came out,
I wondered why they called it that.
because it was like, wow, this unbelievable new thing,
No wire.
right? Now the pasuk says another word, v'hipilo. That's from the language of nofel. How could Rabbi Ishmael say? Rabbi Ishmael says, I don't know what v'hifla means. Oh, you know what it means? V'hipilo, same thing. Really? It's a little weird. Okay, but that's Rabbi Ishmael's. Language. Again, I'll give a justification in just a second, but let's just finish the limud. So when God said that the punishment for disobeying negative commandments is going to be God's wondrous makot, right? His hittings. And now I know that it refers to malkut. It says on all of these commandments. So therefore, the word call includes any scenario for any reason where it's a negative commandment that you weren't careful to not do. So therefore, Ihachi Esther Gemara. So you have the word call, then Ihachi Chayave Asenami. Why do you limit it only to negative commandments? Let's say a person, as an example, doesn't say Kiryat Shema. Let's say a person, as an example, doesn't do any of the positive commandments, doesn't wear tzitzit on a four-cornered beggar. Any chayav, now you should get malkut for that too, because it says kol. On that the Gemara. So why doesn't he hold that? And it's obvious to the Gemara that he doesn't hold that. Like we don't have the option of saying, right, that he holds also for positive commandment. Ilo says the Gemara im lo tishmor ketiv, because it says if you won't guard against. the language of guarding against is not when you don't do something. It's guarding against letting something happen that shouldn't happen. And therefore, it doesn't include, when it says call, it's call on the shmirah. So only things that are in the negative commandment world are part of the shmirah language, okay? Like the words of Rabbi Avin, in the name of Rabbi Eli, every time it says these three words, Hishameh lecha, be careful. Pen, maybe, lest thou shall. Ve'al, and also, and do not allow. Eno ela lo ta'aseh. It's always a lo ta'aseh. So by the way, as an example, Ushmartem et hamatzot. Negative commandment or positive commandment? What are you seeing from here? Negative. There's a commandment of eating matzot, but there's a negative commandment with regards to matzot that you shouldn't allow the matzah to become chametz. Right? Hishamer. So you see the word shmirah automatically. By the way, what's the classic example of this? Nope. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmi'anu ela meyuchad. What does that mean?
Shabbos.
On Shabbat, the luchot, there's two times the Torah talks about the luchot. One in its original place, and one later on when it's being retold. So those two are obviously the same luchot. But one time it says Shamor, and one time it says Zachor Yom HaShabbat HaKadisho. Right? So you have these two Pesukim. What is Zachor and Shamor? And the Gemara answers, how can it be? The answer is Hashem said, during the luchot, Hashem said both. At the same split second, a human being couldn't do that, but at the same split second, God said Zachor and Shamor. To include, says the Gemara, what does it mean? To include the Zechira of Shabbat and the Shmira of Shabbat. So when you ask if someone's Shomer Shabbat, what do you mean really?
You violate the Shabbat.
Violating. That's all about the negative commandments of Shabbat. Let's say a guy sleeps, he gets home Friday afternoon, kills himself. You know what? Works through the whole night, Thursday night, gets home Friday afternoon right before Shkia. Literally tanks out, sleeps until Saturday night, goes clubbing. That's Shmirah. The guy was Shomer Shabbat. The guy, he was Shomer Shabbat. He was not Zocher Shabbat. What does Zocher Shabbat mean, at least in its minimal expression? It means to make Kiddush. Zochrehu al hayayin. Remember it over the wine, okay? So Zachor refers to the positive commandments of Shabbat, of Shemitah. Shamor means the negative. So again, you see this concept of Rabbi Avin Amar Rabbi Eli, that the word Shamor always indicates a negative commandment. So therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak makes sense because he's saying kol includes all. Gemara's question is, what about aseh, a positive commandment? His answer is, it says you're going to imlot shmor et kol. So we're talking already only in the category of negative commandments. So far we understand? Yeah. We were left with one question. What was our one question that we had on Rabbi Yitzchak? V'hifla, v'hipilo. Well, come on. You know what the answer is? He also understands that the word hifla, right, and v'hipilo are two different words. But I believe perhaps what Rabbi Yitzchak is pointing out is that when the Torah tells you that he's going to give him malkut, it didn't need to say v'hipilo hashofet. Is there something specifically we're learning from the language of that the shofet will cast him down and give him malkut?
Yeah.
What are you learning specifically from the fact?
Maybe that's an additional punishment.
That what?
That he gives him Makkot in addition to some other punishment.
So I could have said, right? V'hipilo hashofet v'hikau lefanav. All I could say is v'hikau lefanav. So you're guilty, and then he gets the malkut. Why did we need to add the v'hipilo? And he bends him over and he gives him the malkut. That's just the most efficient way of giving malkut. And the answer is that maybe perhaps that's what he's drawing on the v'hipilo. Okay? And the alliteration of pele and hipil was close enough for this. Now, just by the way, we referred to this before. The Gemara in Shabbat says that when a person dreams of different things, there's times that the dreams have deeper meanings. One of the most famous dreams discussed in the Gemara Berachot is when a person dreams of an elephant. If you dream of an elephant, says the Gemara, Na'aseh lo pilaot, he's going to have miracles happen to him.
I have to think about that.
I've tried 1,000 times, it hasn't worked. Okay?
Why an elephant?
Oh, why an elephant, says the Gemara? Because the Hebrew word for an elephant is pil. So therefore, Na'aseh lo pilaot. That's exactly this Gemara.
Very good. Very good.
You got that? What's the connection between the hipilo or pil and hifla? You see that at least with regards to a loose connection that we could connect the two in the dreams, that's enough. So also over here, I think only because it's mufneh, because he didn't need it, therefore Rabbi Yitzchak would make that derasha. I'm not sure if it was necessary, if Rabbi Yitzchak would also make the derasha. Okay, excuse me, Rabbi Yishmael. Says the Gemara, Ihachi, so now that you've limited, you've said all negative commandments, but not positive, because it says Tishmor. Ihachi, if so, lav she'en bo ma'aseh nami. Let's say there's a mitzvah in the Torah that you should not do something, but the mitzvah has no actual action. What would be the halakha? We know lav she'en bo ma'aseh doesn't get lashes. You only like, let's say I'll give you an example. The Torah says that when you go to war, you should not have fear in your heart. Let's say I have fear. No, I'm not asking what happens to me. I'm asking, let's say I broke that commandment. The Torah says, Lo tisna et achicha, don't hate your brother in your heart. Let's say I did hate him. Do I get lashes for that?
No.
Why not?
There's no positive.
There's no action. There's no action. It's a lav she'en bo ma'aseh. So ask the Gemara, you just told me that it says all of these mitzvot, including everything. I asked you the positive commandments you told me to shmor. Fine, but at the very least, every negative commandment should be in. How come lav she'en bo ma'aseh not? Answers the Gemara, la'asot ketiv. It says if you're not careful to perform, to do, that means that we made it contingent on an action. So therefore, it's only on lav she'en bo ma'aseh. Sorry, it's only on lav she'en bo ma'aseh. The Gemara asks, okay, fine, according to Rabbi Yishmael, what about lav shenitak la'aseh nami? Lav shenitak la'aseh, we already explained. Let's say I steal $5. The Torah tells me, what's the rectification for that stealing of that $5? Ve'eshiv et hagezela shegazal, return that which you stole. So that's a lav nitak la'aseh. It's a negative commandment attached to a positive commandment. So how come on a lav shenitak la'aseh you don't get malkut? You said every. This is also la'asot. The Gemara answers, Dumya de lav de hasima. 1 second. The reason why you're getting malkut over here is only on a isur, which is comparable to a scenario of putting the muzzle on the animal while it's eating. Now, why is this the case that we're going to use this as the prototype to be able to exclude a lav shenitak la'aseh? Because in that scenario we find the commandment of malkut, and since we find the commandment of malkut in that scenario, okay, therefore we expect that every other scenario is similar to the prototype. Okay, so we talk about malkut, we then talk about this isur, and what we're saying is when we put these two things together, malkut lashes and a lav that's not nitak la'aseh, that doesn't have a rectification possibility. So we're telling you, we want every case of malkut to follow this case law. Okay? You got that? That's a stretch.
So it's a case where there is a prohibition that has to be coupled with an action, but where there is no other remedy in the Torah for that particular violation.
Okay.
Right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. But why am I struggling with it? Because I would love this if the example was in the law. So in other words, let's say in a legal scenario, the American government says that any time you sell property and you lied about it to the government, you got to pay a fine of $10. Okay? So you could imagine that a lawyer might come along and say, well, it only says if you're selling your property. If I'm a broker, I'm not included in that law. It's not my property. That would make sense. How about if it says anyone who sells property and is not upfront about it has to pay the $10? And then it continues and says, and a realtor that does whatever, something else, and it continues with some other law. Or telling you the laws of realtors. To say that the earlier law is subject to the parameters of the law that's stated after that law, and you're using proximal connection to tell me that that's a limitation on the law, that's a hard case to win in court. That's not how it reads. So the Torah tells you about Malkut. The next mitzvah after that is a mitzvah that has no possible remedy or rectification for the sin that you've done. Now the Gemara comes along and says, well, obviously, all the cases of Malkut are going to be in the same way as the one that comes after that. That's a hard sell, in my eyes. Rabbi Ishmael, okay? The Gemara says, well, hold on a second. Now that we got to this last point that you made, kul hunami dumya delav dehasima. All these other ones that you took me through the rigmarole of answering, I could have just answered with this. So as an example, earlier on we talked about a positive commandment. We excluded a positive commandment from the word shmirah. I don't need that. Positive commandment's out. You know why? Because this commandment that followed Malkut is a negative commandment. Okay? And that's not dumya, it's not compared to the case of muzzling the animal. As well. We talked about lav she'en bo ma'aseh. Lav she'en bo ma'aseh, we brought a pasuk that says la'asot. You don't need that. Because also over here, muzzling is an action. So I could have excluded it from the muzzling, the action of the muzzling. But the Gemara leaves it at that. Now, again, what would my answer be to this? You know why the Gemara bothered going through those? Because this is a weaker answer. So why did the Gemara just skip to this? Because it's a weaker answer. So therefore, I'd rather have a strong answer on lav she'en bo ma'aseh and lav and aseh, and not getting it for a positive commandment. I'd rather have a more powerful answer than an answer that's a little bit weaker of the fact that it follows the case of Malkut. Okay, let's continue. So that is the opinion, therefore, of Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, can I just? I want you to look at this last Rashi. Hold on. Rashi says. Yeah, hold on. Yeah,
It's literally at the top of the gray line.
Dumya. You see right there in the middle. You see Rashi?
Yeah. Right there.
You got it? Oh, here. You don't have the.
Yeah, I'll turn.
It's okay. It's 5 words. Shehu. Maybe you could live in Nathan Lowe's world for a minute.
It's too small for me.
Shehu katuv etzel parashat Malkut. I'm like, come on. How's that enough? Okay. That's all I wanted. And it's almost like, in my opinion, Rashi doesn't go any further because there's no further to go. So Rabbi Ishmael, that's what. Now I always say this. Whenever you look at one opinion and you find something that's a little bit hard to understand about the origin source of their opinion, you start to wonder, maybe that's why the others disagreed on it. Okay? Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Yitzchak. Okay. Now we move on to the second opinion. The opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So let's just review. What's Rabbi Akiva's opinion? That you could get Malkut, you could get lashes only for Hayaveh Kiritot, but not for Hayaveh Mitot, not for the death penalty cases. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva, why does he say it? Kidei Rish'ato. That when you give Malkut, how do you ascertain whether you're going to give him Malkut, you should hit him Kedei Rishato, according to how wicked he was. Mishum Rish'a Ahat Ata Mechayevo. You could punish him for one Rish'a, right? V'i Ata Mechayevo Mishum Shte Rish'awiyot. You can't punish him for 2 times, for 2 wickedness. Now, what are we communicating over here? Right? We're communicating exactly what Mara said.
No double jeopardy.
Except that the Gemara says it in a funny way. Would you agree?
If I would agree, I wouldn't know. Yeah, I would agree.
What's
I do agree.
What's awkward about the way the Gemara is presenting the idea that we think the Gemara is presenting?
Risha achat,
Sorry?
that one.
One Rish'ah, and you can't
2.
punish him for 2 Rish'ahs. What's awkward about the way what's cumbersome about Rabbi Akiva's language, if that's what he means?
Say we're doing it for 1 and not for 2.
You can't punish him. You should punish him, like the pasuk says, "Mishum rish'a achat ata mechayevo."
But if he did
For
2,
1 wickedness, you could punish him.
but if he did 2 things,
That's what he's excluding. V'i ata mechayevo mishum shtei rish'awiyot. You can't punish him for 2 sins that he did in 1 act. Really? That's how you want to say it? The way I'm looking at it is like this. It should really say you could give him 1 punishment for 1 act, not 2 punishments for 1 act. Here he focuses on the 1 or 2 acts. Rabbi Akiva is almost saying the opposite of what we want him to say. Double jeopardy means you can't punish me 2 times for 1 action. What does Rabbi Akiva say? You can punish me 1 time
for 2 actions.
for 1 action, and you can't punish me 2 times for 2 actions. If they're done with the same act. So I think Rabbi Akiva is actually giving you a added chidush. He's telling you double jeopardy, but he's also adding more.
Genius.
No double jeopardy, says Rabbi Akiva, but guys, settle down. There's more. Right? What's the weight? There's more. It's not only that you can't give me 2 punishments for 1 act, which is 1 rish'ah. You can't give me 2 punishments for 1 act, which is 2 rish'ot. So his double jeopardy extends even when there's 2 isurim. That's why Rabbi Akiva says it in a cumbersome way. Let's look at Rashi one more time. Rashi says, Rabbi Akiva, Akiva da'amar iyata mehayvo mishum shtei rishiyot, hayavek yutot namido lilku. 1 second. So then how come he gives you a punishment for when you got karet? Ta shtei rishiyot ninhu, shadayin onesh hakaret alav. Right? So we'll see this in just 1 second. Rabbi Ishmael, Hani Mili. So 1 second. Why does Rabbi Ishmael not agree with this line? Okay. He said, right, because he holds that you give malkut even when someone gets chayav mitot. Rabbi Ishmael, Hani Mili mitau mamon. That's only when you have death and financial and fatal. Or malkut umamon. Or financial and fatal. Yes. Or death penalty. Or malkut umamon. Or when you have lashes and money. Aval mitau malkut, mita arichtahi. Fascinating insight. He says, it's when we look at a person who gets malkut and a death penalty, the idea is that we give him a death and it's just not so pleasant. So part of the dying is the malkut. Fascinating. Because really, and this is something we're going to learn soon, what's one of the primary laws of malkut?
You can't do it more than a certain amount of time.
Because what?
You'll kill the guy.
Kill him.
How hard is it to say that it's part of the death that he's going to receive? If we're so careful to make sure that he doesn't die from the Malkut. So Malkut is the opposite of dying. It's hurting but not dying.
And here it's together.
And here it's together. So how does he put them together? The answer is that it's also part of Mita, Arichta, except that when the Torah told you that you get a death penalty, the Torah stipulated how the death happens. Sikila serefa hereg vachenek, which is one of the weirdest things that we sing. Right? So there's one of those four. So since the death penalty has to be administered through one of these four ways, therefore the Malkut is held short. But that doesn't stop Rabbi Ishmael from saying that Mita Arichtahi, it's considered a piece, part and parcel of the death penalty. Okay? So, one more time. Rabbi Ishmael, the Gemara is assuming Rabbi Ishmael also holds that there's no double jeopardy. So therefore, when you have a Malkut, you can't also give him a fine. When you have death, you can't also give him a fine. Okay? But when you have death, you could also give him Malkut because that's part of the death penalty. Okay? By the way, how come we're not asking about karet in Rabbi Ishmael? Because we have that same question on Rabbi Akiva, and we're about to ask. It says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, Ihachi chayve keritot atnami. What do you mean? Chayve keritot also. It's no double jeopardy. So the guy's going to get karet. Why are you giving him malkut? The Gemara answers, my amrit. We already gave a tshuva to this answer. You're going to answer, Shem asu teshuvah. If you do teshuvah, right? Then, what's it called? Then the person's going to be forgiven, right? And therefore you have to have malkut, which is not dependent on forgiveness. Hashta mihat lo avdi. So your answer to this is, if he does teshuvah, he's going to get out of karet, and therefore I give him malkut. But until he does teshuvah, he has the karet sitting on him. So therefore it's going to be double jeopardy. So in the pre-teshuvah moment, the guy has two punishments. It's not fair. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Avahu, beferush ribta Torah hayaveh keritot malkut. I don't know what you want. I love your answers. I love your reasonings. The Torah says it. What do you want from my life? Right? The Gamar le'eneh, but the pasuk says that this happens, right, by karet. That karet happens le'eneh, to the eyes of the people. And we learn eneh min le'enecha, right, from the words v'pilo hashofet, that the malkut is administered, right? V'nikla achicha le'enecha, and your brother will be, so to speak, will get this malkut le'enecha, before your eyes. So therefore, since we have the word eneh by karet, and you have the word le'enecha by malkut, the Torah was indicating that these two things are both possible within one person. Okay? So therefore, since we have the pasuk of malkut this way, and the pasuk of karet this way, even though you have a good question by karet, what's going to be before he does teshuvah? What do you want from my life? I have it in pasuk. Now, what's interesting is that if we just take a second to think about where we are at this point in the Gemara right now, that means the place that we are is we have an answer for when the guy does teshuvah, why you could get malkut and karet, even though you hold no double jeopardy. You know why? Because it might not be double jeopardy. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. But until he does teshuvah, it is double jeopardy. That's a question, right? Answers the Gemara, for my life, pasuk. So I have a hybrid of answers. A logical answer on post-teshuvah, a scriptural answer on pre-teshuvah. But to my mind, it seems like we're missing something. Something really obvious over here. And maybe that's what bothers the Gemara on the next step. Gemara asks, Matkif la Rabbi Abba bar Mama, Rabbi Abba bar Mama asked, Ihachi, if that's true, that Rabbi Akiva is learning Eneh to Enecha, Eneh of Karet, to Le'enecha of Malkut, that someone who has Karet can also get Malkut. Hayaveh mitot beti, nami nigmerem. Let's learn also the death penalty people, the guy who gets death by human court, in the same Gezer HaShavah. Why? Because the pasuk also says me'eneh, from the eyes. Now let's just see the pasuk for 1 second.
says in the bottom there.
Hey ends in le'enecha. Is that not it?
Hey and Vav. So Hey is the pasuk that we saw already. V'nikla achicha le'enecha, and your brother will be hit in front of your eyes. Vav is v'haya im me'ene ha'eda na'asta lishgaga ve'asu kol eda par b'makar. So in the case of the Bet Din doing this bishgaga, right? It was hidden me'ene ha'eda, from the eyes of the court. Yeah? So therefore, why wouldn't we also have, right? What's it called? That's in a scenario where the Bet Din is ruling on a capital case. So in those cases, which is a Hayaveh Mita Bidei Bet Din, okay? So a capital punishment case, it uses the word me'ene, and you have the word le'enecha by Malkut, so we should learn the same Gezerah Shavah. Me'ene to le'enecha. The Gemara answers, no, you can't compare. Danin le'ene mi le'enecha. We'll make a Gezerah Shavah le'ene to le'enecha, where it's describing the le'ene of the person who did it was chayav karet. Ve'en danin me'ene mi le'enecha. Since one of them is le'ene and le'enecha, it's similar, we're willing to use that Gezerah Shavah. We're not going to use me'ene to le'enecha. Those are not the same. It's not similar enough in the mem and the lamed, and therefore we're not going to do a Gezerah Shavah. That's how the Gemara answers. Okay, strange answer. I mean, I would have expected the Gemara to say something a little bit different. Could you think of why the Gemara would use one Gezerah Shavah and not the other? Yeah? Anyone? What do you think? Let's go back to the first pasuk. Remember the first pasuk? The pasuk by Karet. The pasuk says by Karet, where is it? Le'ene v'nichretu le'ene b'nei amam. Okay? And they'll be cut off le'ene b'nei amam. Could you think of another reason why we would do one dirasha, not the other? Let's just take one more look, so you'll know the answer. I'm hoping. In Vav, what are we talking about? From the eyes of the Bet Din, it was done shigaga. What's that case talking about? It's talking about when Bet Din made a mistake in a capital case. So what's the halakha? They have to bring what's called par he'alem davar. They bring a korban that Bet Din. Could you imagine that? Can you imagine that, Morris? Imagine there's a court that got something wrong. They have to bring a korban in Bet HaMikdash.
They get it wrong and the guy's killed?
And the guy's killed.
They should do more than that.
The halacha is that they would have to bring a par he'elem davar. Okay? Now, of course, they obviously have to do teshuvah, they have to do lots of other things. But there is a specific korban, a korban that they bring. So, what could anyone think of why we would not make this Gezerah Shavah? I think this is so interesting to me, because I think that this is obvious, and the Gemara does not say it. In the case of le'ene and le'enecha, in both cases we're referring to the judgment of that case. V'nikla achicha le'enecha, and your brother will receive, he'll get the malkut in front of you. And the other one is, it's talking about v'nichreta, and the people are v'nichretu le'enei b'nei amam, and they will get karet in the eyes of the people of it's again the punishment. What's the me'ene over here? It's not about the case at all. Case is over. They made a mistake in that case, and it was hidden from their eyes the truth of the case or whatever. That me'ene has nothing to do with the crime nor the punishment. It's referring to the miscarriage of justice that occurred because they didn't see it. Okay. That's why we don't make a Gezerah Shavah. No, because it's a completely different ene. That you buy?
Sure.
The Gemara doesn't say it.
waiting for you.
Okay? Says the Gemara, "Umay nafkamina." 1 second. If all you're telling me is me'ene, le'ene, what's the difference? My nafkamina, what's the difference? V'atan Rabbi Ishmael, we learned in the Bright of Rabbi Ishmael, Vishav HaKohen, and the Kohen will return. The Pasuk says later on, Uba HaKohen, and the Kohen will come. Zuhi Shiva, Zuhi Bia. The Gemara connects returning and going. So you see, in both cases, even though it said HaKohen, in both cases, one says returning, one says coming, and we learn and compare Shav and Ba, because both of them refer to the Kohen coming back. So if it's similar enough, even in the idea, you're making Gzerah Shava. You know what the extra burn on this? You know what gives it extra mustard? Who's the one that learned this Gzerah Shava?
Rabbi Ishmael?
Rabbi Ishmael. So over here, we're trying to figure out the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael. And you're telling me that the logic is that he won't learn me'ene le'ene. You yourself did a Gzerah Shava with the words, weren't even the same word. And you're going to tell me you're nitpicking on a mem and a lamed in the beginning of the word? No, I'm not buying it. Okay? Ve'od. Okay? By the way, I would have given anything. Could you imagine being a fly on the wall in the Beit Midrash when they were doing this? It's just, it would have been electric.
Geniuses.
Right? Ve'od, says the Gemara, you know what we all would have been like? You know that annoying person that you have to watch a movie with? And you're like, why'd he go there? Why'd he say that? Who's that? How come he's behind? Where's the thing? Right? That would have been us. They'll be like, Ve'od, and we'd be like, why'd he say that? Where's he coming from? There'll be some genius like giving us the interpretation. Rashi will be helping us along. Okay. Ve'od, says the Gemara, not only that, Ligmor me'ene, mile'ene, we should learn me'ene, le'ene. Why? Why should we learn those cases of mitad b'dei shamayim, mitad b'dei bedin to karet? We should learn it the other way around. That every case of karet has malkut dehagamur le'ene mile'enecha. So if you learned le'ene to le'enecha, right? And le'ene to le'enecha told you, right, that there's malkut in the case of karet, right? Le'ene and le'enecha. That's where we had the Gzerah Shava. So we should now learn me'ene to le'ene. What's the Gemara asking over here, over and above what we said before? What are we saying over and above what we said before? What do you think?
Over and above?
Yeah, we asked before.
You should. Both,
but we just said you should make a Gzerah Shava of me'ene to le'ene, right? That's what we said. But why is the Gemara? Why is the Gemara not including in this? Why is this the original opinion, original question of the Gemara? What's extra in this question of the Gemara?
Isn't that Malkut is applied in Karet and death penalty also? Is that the issue?
Yes, but we already had that before. No? The answer is that the Gemara is saying, fine, you say you don't want to learn me'ene to le'enecha. No problem. But once you learned le'ene to le'enecha, I'll now learn me'ene to le'ene. That's similar enough. You got it? You get the second question of the Gemara? It's genius. Once you said that le'enecha and le'ene are the same, so you have Gzerah Shava linking Malkut and Karet, now me, the second guy, okay, Rabbi Akiva, right, who I hold that it's only relevant by Karet and not by Hayavim Mitot Bedin, and I told you because of this Gzerah Shava, I don't want to learn me'ene of capital cases to le'enecha. It's too different. This one says ene, and that one says enecha. This one says me'ene, that one says le'enecha. No problem, says the Gemara. But you learned already le'enecha to le'ene. And le'ene and me'ene are very similar. So if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So the Gemara's second question, first question is, you should learn the Gzerah Shava. Second question is, even if you don't, you still would learn it in a cascading form of le'enecha to le'eneh and le'eneh to me'eneh. The Gemara says, okay, now this question, you just knocked us out. Okay? So therefore, Rabbi Akiva, who says that karet is included and not hayaveh mitot, what leg is he standing on? The Gemara answers, Kibla mine Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak. Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak learned, he accepted, he agreed with this question of Rav Abba bar Mama. And therefore he said, where do we learn it from? Kidei rishato. The reason is because when you give malkut, you only do it kidei rishato according to his rishut. Mishum rishah achat atam hayvo. You punish him for one and not for two. Atam hayvo mishum shtei rishot. You can't have double jeopardy. So therefore, says the Gemara, birishah hamesura lebedin hakatuv medaber. You got the answer? So you can't do double jeopardy. One second. So therefore, you don't have malkut by capital punishment, but you also should not have by karet. But what kind of rishut are we excluding over here? Rish'ah misura libedin hakatu medaber. We only ever were talking about a rish'ah that's given over to bedin. Now, let's for 1 second, okay? For 1 second, I want to take a look at where is it here? Tosafot, okay? Let's take a look at Tosafot for 1 second. Yeah, you guys have Tosafot Berishah?
The fourth one.
Tosafot says as follows. V'ta'amad Rabbi Akiva mishum kidei rishato. Ulefi ze, according to this, b'chayaveh mitot delo hitrubo lemita. So whenever there's a hayav mita case, that they did not give him a forewarning, the witnesses did not give him forewarning, dileka mita, where there's no death, v'hitrubo lemalkut, but they gave him instead hatra'ah for malkut, for punishing by lashes. Dehashta leka el rishad malkut. Lucky, he would get malkut. Tosafot asks if that's the case with kasha. That's hard to understand. Ba'ama parich, that we've always asked in the Gemara around many places, including Shabbat. Gabi lav d'mechamer, lav shenitan lazahat mitat betinu, ve'en lo kina lav, ve'af ki leka hatam rishad demita. We have a general principle. Let's say there's a sur that gets a death penalty.
And
I warn the guy, but what did I warn him for? I didn't warn him for the death penalty. What did I warn him for? Malkut. Warn him for malkut. One more time. What did we just say? Rabbi Akiva says you can't get a guy for mita and also for malkut. Why am I not getting him for malkut? Because I'm getting him for mita. What if I can't get him for mita? It's not a scenario where there's two wickednesses. There's only one. According to what we just saw, he should get malkut. But the Gemara says in Shabbat that when they have a lav shenitan le'azharat mita, that even if I don't actually get you, but I could get you, just the fact that you're in the parasha, the capital crime, gets you out of malkut. Why would that be? Wow. You see from here, not that way. Beautiful Tosafot's question. And the answer is, Yesh Lomar, the hatam over there, Hainu kirava de moki lemilta de Rabbi Akiva, behitru bo lemalkut. The Gemara over there that says that you can't punish him because it's included in the mita is only going according to Rava, who holds that the words of Rabbi Akiva is behitru bo lemalkut, where they got warning for malkut. Va'afilu achi lo laki. You still don't get malkut. Ta'avilav shenitan lazat mitat bedim ve'en lo kina lav. So Tosafot has to express that Gemara is going in a very specific case. It's going only according to Rava, that's following the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Akiva says that you don't get for a lava of mitana asharat mitat bedin. But, coming back over here, what's the Gemara's final answer over here, at least according to the way we understand the Gemara? The Gemara says, B'kedei rishato, you punish him kedei rishato. Why, if kedei rishato, you can't get him twice? You're getting, therefore, you can't get him for hayaveh mitot betin, but you could get him for karet. Why could you get him for karet? The Gemara's answer is because it's talking about a rishut that's given over to betin. Now, the Gemara does not tell you what those words mean. We're only absolving you in a case where your punishment, the wickedness, is given over to Beit Din. Can I give you my understanding of this? Very straightforward. Yeah? When we say that you can't get someone 2 times, what do we mean? What do we mean? We said, like, if you're going to get him for death penalty, you can't get him for Malkut. Yes, we're asking, so why could you get him for Malkut if you get him for Karet? The Gemara answers, because we only mean the law of double jeopardy is when the Rishah, the wickedness, is given over to Beit Din.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
It's Mishamayim, it's not from Beti.
Right, but what does that mean? What is the Gemara? Why is the Gemara saying that? So I would wager that the Gemara means something very simple. When the punishment is bidei shamayim, what's the risk? Asat teshuvah, he doesn't get it. When it's given over to Beit Din, since Beit Din could never possibly know if you really did teshuvah in your heart, so Beit Din always administers the punishment. It's not their job to know whether you did teshuvah or not. It's their job to ascertain the cases of the facts of the case and to decide, is there enough evidence to be able to give you the punishment, okay? So what the Gemara maybe is answering is super simple. It's true that I said I can't do double jeopardy, but that's only when there's a for sure double jeopardy.
Right.
In this case, so we asked earlier, in the time that he doesn't do teshuvah, you're getting him twice, and in the time after if he does teshuvah, now you got one. You're missing the point. It's not whether before, after he did teshuvah, he didn't teshuvah. The only time where we say double jeopardy is when there's a for sure double jeopardy. If one of them is a safek, it doesn't matter if you do get it, you don't get it. The safek can't get you off of the vadai punishment.
Right.
So I want to say that that's what this Gemara means. And really, this is what the Gemara should have said in the first place. Okay. I think it was, we have one more piece? No, the last piece is gonna carry on. The only thing I'm always nervous about is when we have a break from Sunday to Sunday, are we going to forget, where we're up to? Because there's a little bit of a back and forth.
13b4.
13b3. No?
13b4, first thing. Yeah. First, we just finished the first paragraph.
So I was on the Hebrew page.
Yeah.
And this one, we're on 13b3, right before the next opinion of Rava. So next week we'll discuss a different alternate understanding of the Makkot of Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. So remember, we have 3 opinions. Let's just review. Rabbi Yishmael says that you could punish someone with Malkut for Karet and Hayav Mitah Beit Din. Okay? That's what he holds. The Rabbi Akiva holds that you can only punish someone for Malkut when you have Karet. Rabbi Yitzchak comes along and flips the whole thing on its head and says that we have a mi'ut that says you could never punish someone for karet, and you could only punish them for double whammy for hayav and mitah b'di. And that we're going to see Be'ezrat Hashem next week. Okay?